shouldn't read the scriptures so much.
What?
Because you're getting all these ideas.
You don't want to get ideas from the scriptures. That would be just terrible. Wait, so you're out of the church and you downloaded Mutual?
Yes.
Don't worry, I did the same thing.
And it was so weird because it's like you leave the church and then all the active LDS people are like, what's your problem? And then you like rejoin the church and then like the people who have already left are like, what's your problem? And so it's like you don't fit anywhere.
There's always somebody asking, what is your problem?
I was active in the LDS Church. It did so much good for me. I received the baptism of fire as a fully active member of the church. So like, it doesn't really matter your church membership.
No, it shouldn't be organizations or institutions that hold our relationships together. It should be our relationships that hold our relationships together.
The RLDS people warn their children to stay away from Utah.
Oh man.
Unless they want to become a plural wife. Sure, we got out of the covenant path checkbox, but like we can't make the doctrine of Christ into a new checkbox path.
Right. Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 44 of the Clarity Podcast. I'm your host Claire, and this week's guest was Thomas Fackrell. And Thomas shared with us one of the greatest love stories I've heard in a long time. You guys are going to want to stay tuned for all this and more on this week's episode of the Clarity Podcast. Everyone has a journey they're walking. And along that road, we are met with potholes, road bumps, rain, storms, and sometimes just fog. But through it all, we're really just looking for one thing: clarity. Clarity so we can walk with confidence in that next step. There's one source I run to for that clarity. In the darkest of nights, Jesus offers me light that shines through even the thickest storms. Welcome to the Clarity Podcast, where we find clarity through the one who saves us all.
I remember at one point I'm running on a treadmill, working out one night, and I'm listening to a podcast where he's, going through the temple sealing ceremony is just this watered down version of polygamy. And I just feel like, that camera effect in movies when like the main character is having this realization and it's like the depth of field like changes and it like zooms out and it's like, like I had that moment. Okay.
All right.
And it's like, oh my goodness, like it's not true. And it was so hard. It's like what is going on? I was so disoriented. And this started me down the slippery slope of like new Mormon history, where it's like Joseph Smith was a polygamist. Can you believe what he did with a 14-year-old? He lied to Emma. And all of the successors after him, Brigham Young on, they're all just as dirty. But like Joseph started it. And so Mormon Stories podcast, Radio Free Mormon, Mormon Discussions, all those ex-Mormon podcasts, I started to sympathize with them a lot because I had become persuaded of the false narrative about Joseph Smith. And oh boy, I was going through the stages of grief for sure, especially the anger stage. I was so angry at the church for lying to me. So angry. Because I gave them my whole heart, my whole life, and they lied. And no one in my family understood to the level that I wanted them to, because I was now untouchable. I was someone to be feared because I didn't have a testimony anymore. And it's like I had leprosy. And so all the people who used to be my support system were not my support system. And so that led me to turn to these podcasts, these unfaithful podcasts that are just spewing doubt and stirring the pot. It's like a spirit, like a familiar spirit that governs ex-Mormonism, angry ex-Mormonism. Mm-hmm. And I became possessed by it for several months.
Okay, so you had a very ex-Mormon phase. Did you remove your records at this time, or was this later?
Nope, I'm still in the church.
Okay, still in the church?
Because I'm navigating this marriage, I don't want to leave the church. I don't want to, because that would, who knows what that's going to do to how my ex-wife at the time feels about the temple sealing. Because when I opened up to her and said, I don't know if the temple is if there was authority to do that. Mm-hmm. And she was like, you don't think our marriage is real? It was just awful. It was just, misunderstanding, right? Mm-hmm. So couldn't turn to her, couldn't turn to anyone. Yes, had a very ex-Mormon phase. Threw away my garments in the dumpster. I was so angry. Mm-hmm. And I do remember praying to God, though, at one point where it's like, God, my whole world's upside down. I will do anything I need to know the truth. I don't care what the truth is. Just tell me the truth. I just need the truth. And I was willing to like throw out the whole restoration if I needed to. The Book of Mormon too. Like all these experiences I've had in the past, like the spirit of ex-Mormonism it'll persuade you that was all just a chemical reaction in the brain. And it'll just get you to doubt everything. So I learned to see things from that point of view. But it didn't last forever because, I mean, the worst it got, I threw out my garments. I like went to my bishop. I like turned my temple recommend. I'm like, I'm not doing this. And I told him everything I had wrong with the restoration and church history. And he's like, I didn't know about any of this. And he did open up a little bit where he's like, okay, that policy of like preventing children of gay couples from getting baptized. He's like, I had a real problem with that. And so he's like trying to like relate on some level, but he couldn't fully because I was like I was kind of intense. Kind of taking out my anger on him too. So it's like, poor guy doesn't know what to do. Eventually though, I get out of that phase because I realize I'm becoming a really angry person. And this is a bitter fruit. And I'm still learning. I'm still listening to podcasts, trying to understand things. And there was a good month when I was even agnostic about who or what God was. But I never like stopped believing in a form of God. It didn't take long before I realized that like it's not totally out of the question that there's this anthropomorphic God, a human-shaped being who is a spiritual being who is more ascended than us, who is guiding us, and that could be our Heavenly Father and Jesus. Like they could occupy that position. Like that's possible out there in the realm of possibility. Okay, I can see an intellectual like framework that this is possible. And that kind of opened the door for me to have faith, this hope, this desire to believe again. And I also thought like, well, okay, the church, it has done a lot of good in my life. And I've had good experiences. I don't know what they're caused by. I can't explain them. But I'm going to give the church another chance. I'm going to not be a validity Mormon where I believe it because it's the one true church. I'm going to be a utility Mormon where I believe it, or I show up and act like it's true because it works for me. Like it has good enough fruits. And so it's very nuanced, very just trying to like be on two sides of a fence, basically. That's not sustainable. And eventually, so I even like renewed my temple recommend again, like on some linguistic technicalities, and just thought, okay, I'm going to try to just make this work, even though I really don't believe in everything anymore. I don't know what I believe. Renew my temple recommend, just try to be active again. We move wards and we meet a new bishop. He doesn't know anything about this past history. And then I just like, it was at this time actually that I started in my searching, I ran into the Doctrine of Christ Facebook group. And they're all talking about like, you must be born again, like receive the baptism of fire and the Holy Ghost. And they have presentations on the church, the history of the church and how like God took his name off the church and we're in apostasy and polygamy was never true and Joseph Smith wasn't a polygamist. And, you know, some of the ideas that are presented in those presentations, they're very intriguing. I can't say I like necessarily agree with 100% of it 100% of the time, but I started to realize like, wait a second, like there's something here. And I got really good at going on the Joseph Smith Papers website for myself and checking sources because I didn't do that in the first time when I adopted the spirit of angry ex-Mormonism because they just spew things out like every hearsay, everything that anyone has ever said about Joseph Smith, they just take it like it's true because it validates their hurt. And so I said, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make that mistake this time around. So I checked sources for myself and I'd watched Who Killed Joseph Smith. And I was starting to piece things together where it's like, okay, polygamy was introduced by the apostles and they had to get Joseph and Hiram out of the way so that they could keep doing polygamy. This makes sense. And like, I'm still trying to have like faith and doing my best to follow God the way I know how, but it's still very head heavy for me. And I come to this intellectual understanding of where the church is and how it's in apostasy. And I get involved. I get involved with the Doctrine of Christ group. I start going to the meetings. And I do have like a moment where I show up and Dustin Smith is there and he gives me this big bear hug. And all he says is, welcome home. And I felt it. I was so joyful. It's like, oh my goodness, like I found my people. I found someone who understands me. This is so hard. I felt so alone and just cut off from like in my own marriage, in my family, like people don't understand. I used to be like the kid that like people would say like, oh, Thomas, you're going to be an apostle one day, like in seminary. And now it's like, I am like the leprous one, like, oh, he's the apostate. And like, you've probably related to that, feeling that.
Oh yeah, totally. Especially because people are like, you are so Molly Mormon. What happened?
Yeah.
And
yeah, Molly Mormon, meet Peter Priesthood. Like,
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And so disorienting. No one knew what to do with me. But I'd found this group and it was awesome. Some really good truths, some really good emphasis on the Book of Mormon and the doctrine of Christ. Loved it. You know, seeking after, receiving, and acting on revelation. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Met some wonderful, amazing people, humble followers of Christ in that group. Unfortunately, my time in it was somewhat short-lived because I started to notice a pattern of idolatry forming. There was a particular individual in the group who kind of took it upon himself to lead people. And it's kind of like if you disagreed with him, then like you were bad. And I saw some people I respect stop affiliating themselves and associating themselves with him. And I realized, wait a second, because I'd gotten sucked in. It was kind of like a cult, honestly. I'd gotten sucked in where it's like, oh my goodness, there's this new, fresh paradigm, this new look on how the gospel works and like end times prophecy and the return of Joseph Smith and like just these things where it's like intellectually you can make a case for it. But like, is the Spirit of God there confirming it? Some would say yes, some would say no. But the point is, it's like undecided for a lot of people. And it's kind of irrelevant when it comes to our daily walk with Christ. And I was getting distracted from my daily walk with Christ by being so caught up, lost in the sauce of these doctrinal controversies. And it was turning me into this like militant, disagreeable person who just wanted to like preach like Bible bash again down people's throats. And I saw the fruits of that and said, this is not turning me into a good person. I don't care how like 99% on track your doctrine is, like this 1%, it's turning me into a bad person. So I'm out. And I left. And that was a few months before that group kind of had a bit of a falling out. There's a little bit more of a scandal that happened, but I was out before that happened, just because I could see what it was doing to me. After I had moved on. And I learned a great lesson in discernment because it took a couple months before I could see that like, this isn't good. But I mean, you have to kind of have something right in front of your face before you can like, whoa, wait a second.
Oh yeah, and we have to have experiences that teach us things. Sometimes I feel like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to just like know ahead of time. We're not always going to know ahead of time, and it's okay to have experiences. It's how we learn. It's what God wants us to do.
Yeah. And it's like, God's going to help us course correct our journey.
Absolutely.
We don't need to be so afraid that we've like perfectly triangulated the coordinate, like figured out the gospel perfectly before we take a step forward in faith. We're all going to make mistakes, and God's not going to punish us and excommunicate us if we take one wrong step. He's going to gently guide us right back on the path because it's going to be obvious when we start making these bad decisions. We're going to see the fruits. And if we're honest with ourselves, and he'll just gently guide us back as long as we stay plugged into him. So that's what my experience has been.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful.
And so, but after I stopped affiliating myself with this group, I still was like a sister, or I guess I should say unaffiliated, new Facebook page was started called Doctrine of Christ Discussions, which was like a lot of like transplants from the original group, but like a lot of new people too. And it was meant to just be like unaffiliated with all that drama. It's like, we just want to talk about the doctrine of Christ and our path and walk with him. And that kind of became my home for a time because, and it was a bit of a coping mechanism, you know. So it helped. It had its purpose for me.
And were you still married at this time?
I still was.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I was still struggling there. And so I still needed a coping mechanism. And you know, you think by now I'd realize Jesus is the person I should turn to.
Right.
And I had my moments when I did turn to him. But I still had these habits of looking for comfort in these placeholders. And this Facebook group was one of them. I loved discussing the scriptures with people in the group. It was edifying. It was awesome. But for me, I'm not saying everyone who's in that group does this, but for me, I let it become a bit of a coping mechanism and a placeholder for my relationship with God many times. But I stayed in touch, but I like kept my distance a little bit too, because it's like, after I felt a little burned by what had happened with the other group.
I think a lot of people did in that group for sure.
Yeah. And so it's like, I don't want to, that was weird. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was like really good in some ways, but really weird in other ways. And like, I don't want that. So it's like, how can I, preserve this good? So anyway, I think I got like, I was still studying a lot. I think I listened to a lot of Denver Snuffers stuff at that time. And I felt like, so this other group, they had like done like baptisms. They had this idea that like, you need a Melchizedek priesthood baptism. And they had persuaded me of that at the time. I didn't believe it by the time I had left, but I had received it at their hands. But I just felt icky about it. And it's like, I want to just start fresh. And so I was still technically an LDS member this whole time, by the way. I ended up, they have that they call themselves the remnant, right? The people who accept Denver Snuffers messages. And to his credit, I actually quite enjoy a lot of what he has to say. I think he's got a lot of really, really good points that he's worth a listen. He nor anyone is worth idolizing, though, or becoming a replacement to God.
Agreed.
And so that summer, though, I felt very emboldened by the message he was sharing. And I did want to just show my faith. And I felt God encouraging me to just get baptized again. And so they kind of do this sort of like non-denominational baptism where it's like you can get baptized by someone in their group, but you're not like a part of their group because they just they openly say like, you can be a part of any church and we'll accept baptism from us, but I still go to your church. So it's like, okay. So I did it in the Saratoga Springs because they like to do it like in the open water and in like living water, they call it, right? That was pretty cool. Like I went on their website, I coordinated with them and they had someone come out and he and his wife came and baptized me. It was hot. It was on a summer day in those hot springs and it was cool. It wasn't like an overwhelming spiritual experience, but it was peaceful. It was peaceful. And then they did sacrament there by the waterside and it was really nice. And then it was not long after that I got to a point where it's like, in order to progress spiritually, I think I need to be done with the LDS Church. It's not meeting my needs. And mind you, I had actually continued to attend like for a long time sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I came to the realization that I'm gonna leave the church. And I had a little bit of a conflict within me. It's like, am I gonna do something to get me excommunicated? Like some of my friends who I really respect, or am I just gonna go out quietly? And I thought like, well, I know my ego would really like it if I caused a ruckus. So therefore I can't do that. So I just wrote the letter and submitted it to my bishop. And he's like, are you sure you want to do this? Your family will be so disappointed. And he's like, I just really wouldn't want you to hurt relationships there. And he had a good heart. But I'm like, he's like, I think you shouldn't read the scriptures so much.
What?
Because you're getting all these ideas.
You don't want to get ideas from the scriptures. That would be just terrible, right?
But that's how I interpreted it in the moment. I'm like, excuse me? But I mean, to his credit, this man, he was kind of one of the more humble ones where it's like, he doesn't know a ton about church history or anything. It's more just day to day showing up and serving God. And so for him, the scriptures had their purpose, but not to the point of disrupting his whole life. Of you need to make these major life changes. And so that's where it was hard for him to understand where I was coming from. But of course I went forward with it anyway. I just submitted and I'd spoken with my wife and I'd already brought up divorce probably 2 times by now. But since it's her biggest fear, it's not something we were going to do. Okay. Even though it's you've already told me that I'm not the same person. If you had met me as I am now, but back before we started dating and I was this kind of a person, you already are telling me to my face that you would not have been interested in me. And so I was like, why are we still together? But she said, if you leave the church, I'll still stay with you. You don't need to be in the church. So I left and I remember submitting my letter and getting the letter in response and feeling a really big weight lift off my shoulders. It was awesome. I am not tied to this anymore. And I continued that way just the rest of the year, just still kind of lone wolfing it, I guess, though, just studying what I can, praying, trying to grow in the gift of revelation and hearing God's voice. And it was during this year that I'd also confirmed that back when I was 17, that was receiving the gift of the Holy Ghost. And so my confidence in that grew too. And I was learning more about what it meant and trying to grow in the gifts of the Spirit. So the next year came around, 2023 arrives, and early in that year, I get this revelation from God that like I need to leave my job. I had been employed in data science, was making a good paycheck, but was basically just like funding this lifestyle of like this roommate situation basically, and just feeling kind of like I'm so miserable. And I was praying, I'm like, God, is this job good for me to have? And he's just like, nope. I'm like, should I quit? And he's like, yep. I'm like, oh, but like I have a mortgage. Like, what am I gonna do? It took me a couple months to finally act on that. And I also got to a point where I had the courage to ask God, like, should I get divorced? And he basically, what finally gave me the courage to go forward with that, he's like, it was him saying like, Thomas, like, this isn't a marriage. Like, it hasn't even gotten to the point, it's not a marriage. And that was finally where it's like, okay, I'm ready to be done. So I filed for divorce and quit my job. But I also, like, you know, being the natural man in me, I was like afraid of losing that income. So I like tried to pivot and ask my boss to like, oh, can I just keep it? But they had already like started the process. So I lost the job, but it's like, okay, no, like this is what God wanted. And then I just spent that summer, I moved back home to my parents, and I was ready for my life to turn upside down yet again. So as if it wasn't already chaotic enough. And that summer was like super transformative because I was finally focusing on my relationship with Jesus Christ and not just like head heavy, just in my nose in the books, studying. And I had family again. So I had that support where I didn't necessarily need these like Facebook groups as an emotional crutch. They aren't that by default. I want to clarify. They serve a purpose that's really good. But I wasn't using them as the tool they should have been, right? And this summer is when I really, like my relationship with Jesus Christ really came alive again because I wasn't wearing garments and I felt like a teenager again. It's like, whoa, like I had to go to Target and like buy new underwear and it's just like regular, like the kind I had when I was 17 years old, you know? But it's like, I feel like a kid again. And Christ says, come on, like become as a little child so you can inherit the kingdom of heaven. And I felt that. And in my journeys with God, it came to the month of July of 2023 where God told me, okay, so I downloaded Mutual, right? Because I'm like, okay, I'm single again.
Wait, so you're out of the church and you downloaded Mutual?
Yes, because you see...
Don't worry, I did the same thing.
You see, I was a member of the church when I came to a realization of all of these things, that all is not well in Zion. So if it can happen to me, it can happen to someone else. That was my logic.
Yep.
So
that was mine too.
I thought, why not? Come on. So, and that was weird. I probably went on like 1 or 2 mutual dates and like they were mutual dates. Like nothing came of it. I don't know if I need to comment on it, like unless you want me to.
I mean, you can share whatever you want about Mutual. I give 0 out of 5 stars.
I second that. I'll leave it at that.
I mean, I had 2 relationships from dating apps. One of them mutual. Neither of them worked out.
Well, I was just confused why I wasn't getting all the matches. I'll just leave it at that. No, I was a little bit like bold because it's like in my bio, I like put some description about like, this is what I believe about the church. And I'm like, of course, they're going to run away if they see that. So.
I did that too. And then I just argued with a bunch of guys. And I got posted on this Facebook page called Crazy Mutual Profiles.
Oh, I think I saw that. And I was like,
yep.
I started following that
was
too.
Me.
No, I'm like, I wasn't happy because it's like, I think I might have like known of you at the time and I'd known that like, okay, you're kind of in this space. And so I was like, that's not cool. Like, yeah.
Everybody was in the comments like, she has virtue problems. And I was like, nope, that's not it.
Yeah. I had another friend who got put on there, but not for like the same reasons you were. But people, social media, man, like brings out the worst in people.
It does. Why are we dating on something that brings out the worst in people? Something to think about. Yeah. That's how I felt. But like, I still kind of like, kept my fishing line in the water just in case. I did that for a while too.
So, and I also downloaded other apps too, because there's like the Christian one and like, nothing ever came of that.
Yep.
But so it's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And so I'm like single now, but I'm working on my relationship with Jesus. And I feel like, okay, I know Jesus. Like I was receiving a lot of revelation about that there is actually someone out there for me, specifically prepared for me. And like, I just need to like stay faithful and like keep up my relationship with God, and he'll prepare me. He'll change things within me to be ready for that. And I was so excited for that. When I got confirmation from the Spirit that there like is someone who, for lack of a better term, you might call a soulmate, like out there for me, I was very excited. And also though, in this season of last summer, God is having me like go on walks with him like every day, especially this one month of July where he's like social fast. You know, I don't know if I can encourage this for everyone, but it's what I needed at that time. Stay off social media. Don't try to go on dates with people. Don't like hang out with friends. Just like you can hang out with family, but just, you know, keep it between us just this month. And I would go and walk to a creek nearby my house every day. And I would there was like a little bridge over it, and I'd sit on it and I'd just watch the water flow, and I'd listen to these more like heart oriented podcasts. And I also made some friends. I'm getting ahead of myself because I did meet some good friends who are kind of in this space too, but down in Arizona. And I like they held a retreat that was kind of like EFY for young adults, but like not by the church. And it was very edifying. Project Edify. You can go look it up. I assume they're still doing it. Wonderful experience. Made some great friends. But that helped like open my mind to like they were all LDS though too. And it's like, oh, maybe is it good for me to be out of the church? Because I watched earlier that year, I'd watched the Who Killed Joseph Smith 2 premiere, and like Michelle Stone was there, and she's like, we got to stay in the church to like, it's a sinking ship. We got to stay there to help people. And for some reason that like, oh, like maybe I shouldn't have left the church. Ooh, like maybe I should still be in it, knowing everything I know to like help guide people who might be stumbling. So then I started, you know, thoughts stirring me like, do I need to return to the church? And I'm carrying this forward into the summer of, you know, God, what do I do now? I'm in your hands. What do I do? And one of the things he told me is, Thomas, I need you to move to Flagstaff, Arizona. But Flagstaff, Arizona? I have never been there. Like I've driven through it. It's pretty. It has pine trees. It's not like Red Rock, Arizona. It's like high 7,000 feet elevation, high desert, like beautiful place. And he's like, you need to move there, and you can do a master's program there in mathematics. And that's what I need you to do. And I am like coming out of a divorce. I have all these financial obligations. I'm not working at this time because I can't, like I had quit one, and it's hard to find a job in the economy, like in the tech industry. And I'm applying places, and I'm just not getting any leads. And God, I'm like feeling scared because it's like, oh, if I go back to school, like I'm thrusting myself into student poverty if I do that. I'm not going to make a dime if I do that. And like I already have the education to make a good living with what I already know. This makes no sense, God. Why are you having me go back to school to go and to this town where I don't know anyone there? And academia is corrupt. Like what am I supposed to do? Like if I speak out and say how I feel about anything, if I become a professor, like I'm going to get canceled or something. If I like have any sort of ounce of like God-fearing conservatism or anything in me. So it's like, this makes no sense. But he confirmed it. He had me, like I flipped open in the book of Isaiah, and it talks about like raising an ensign on a banner, and it shall be weighed on a mountaintop. And as I'm reading these things, in the Gileadi translation, there's only one place in the Bible that the word Flagstaff is used, and it's in the Gileadi translation. In one of the verse about a flagpole and about an ensign or a banner or the army flag being waved and hoisted up on this flagpole or flagstaff is how he chose to translate it. And I read that and it was like, whoa, this is God's way of confirming to me And it's not because it was in the scriptures and therefore it was God's way of confirming it. Like God was confirming it to me, and this was the method he happened to be using. And so I knew, it's like, you got to go. I got to go to Flagstaff. I'm being called to Flagstaff, Arizona, this very specific place. God wants me there. And so I'm praying to him, and I'm asking, why do you want me to go here so bad? And he says, Thomas, this is where I am going to reveal my love for you. And you are going to be like anyone who I call, where you're going to be like that banner on, like high on a mountaintop, a banner is unfurled, right? What's that banner? Well, I'm going to put you on a mountaintop, and the banner is my love. I'm going to wave you because you're going to have experiences with my love, and like you need to share that. And so I'm sending you there. And that's all the details he would give me. And like, I was satisfied with that. I need to clarify. So I was like, okay, we're doing this. So I applied to the program, I got in, and still though I'm wrestling with the natural man in me, because as it's getting closer to the time to move down there, I'm like doing calculations about what my finances are going to be like. And it's like, I'm going to be living paycheck to paycheck when I'm down there. And I've never had to do that. And I was so scared. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, why? That's so stressful. And so like, I even like started applying to other jobs, like in other cities. And like, I was kind of being like Jonah, and I was afraid. And it didn't get swallowed by a whale though.
That's good.
Yeah. No, I ultimately did go, but because God gave me a dream. And in this dream, I was walking the streets of my neighborhood, in my local neighborhood where I grew up, and there was a lion just roaming the streets. Not a mountain lion, just like a African safari lion. But it didn't have a mane. So therefore it was young. And it wasn't female. It was a male lion. It was young. And it was like haggardly and weak. And it almost looked sick. And I intuitively knew in this dream that it wasn't going to harm me if I went up to it. So I go to the lion, and I can see that it's like its tongue is hanging out, and it's like it's so famished, it's so thirsty. And my car was nearby, so I guess I had water in my car, and so I gave it some water. I like poured some water for it, and it was like so thankful to get just a little bit of water. And then I had like some strawberries, and I fed it, and it was like how slowly and delicately it moved its mouth when it ate these strawberries. It was so hungry and weak. And that was the dream. That was it. And so it's like, all right. But when I woke up, God said, read Psalm 34. It's like, boom, instantly, like right as soon as I woke up. This was during that summer, that month of no like social, like this fasting, social fasting. And I turned to Psalm 34. I think it's verse 8. And it says, young lions do suffer, like the young lions hunger and suffer, something like that. But they who trust in the Lord shall not want for any good thing. It's like, oh my goodness, I saw that, God. Like, that was in my dream. Like, I know the young lion hungers and suffers, like, because you showed it to me. I saw it. But it's like, it's what came next in the verse. That is what God was trying to tell me. It was like, Thomas, if you trust me, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to provide for you financially. You don't need to worry. It's like, okay, God, I hear you. Like, and so like, I couldn't deny that. Like, okay, God shows me the symbol. He tells me the specific, and I wasn't familiar with the Psalms. I didn't know Psalm 34. He just gave it to me. So that was like, boom, okay. Yep, God's serious about this. I need to just trust him. I need to just thrust myself just like full facing the student poverty and just jump right back into it. And that's what I did. So I get to Flagstaff, and I am just like, it was so hard. I was so lonely and just like scared. Like it was like I was in this apartment that was like backed up against a parking garage. Like the window was the parking garage. And it was just like, why am I here? And I was so like isolated from friends and family. It was like, why did I do this? And like, God, are you sure this is what you wanted? And I started my program in mathematics, and it's like, I'm like studying stuff there that like I learned at BYU. And it's like, why am I here? Like, this makes no sense career-wise. I assumed I was just going to become a professor because it's like, why else would I go to school? But I'm learning this stuff in school. I'm like doing well in the program, but I'm actually going to the local institute because that's like the closest thing to home. And I attend, and I just feel the familiarity of like the dark red brick. It's like one of those old-fashioned church buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a wave of peace come over me. And those feelings I was feeling earlier in the year of like, do I need to rejoin the church to like help people feel God's love? I just felt really strongly that I needed to. I didn't understand why. Because it's like, I know where the corruption is. I know this has nothing to do with my salvation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did feel like it was, I needed to though. I felt God was telling me, Thomas, come home. And I had interpreted that like, you need to like, this is your cultural identity. Like just, I need you here. Kind of like how I had Ammon among the king and the people there to serve them. Like, I need you back. I thought, Lord, I will do anything. I will humiliate myself, make myself look like a fool, and get back into the church, even if it's the risk of people misunderstanding me and thinking that like I'm all on board with everything again when I'm really not. So I did. I worked with that bishop there, and we worked until I was able to get rebaptized, and I had my older brother rebaptize me, and I'm really close with him, so he understood a little bit more maybe about like what I was feeling about my desires for getting rebaptized, and he was happy to. And my twin brother confirmed me, and I made it clear at the baptismal service that like I'm only doing this out of obedience to God, and it's not my responsibility how other people choose to interpret that. You know, if it validates their worldview or religious views. I was just like, that's none of my concern. So they were all really happy. Like my little brother got married like that weekend, because I actually went back to Utah for my little brother's wedding, and like the couple days before I like got baptized and back into the church.
Huh.
And it was so weird because it's like you leave the church and then all the active LDS people are like, what's your problem? And then you like rejoin the church, and then like the people who've already left are like, what's your problem? And so it's like you don't fit anywhere.
There's always somebody asking, what is your problem?
Pretty much. And so I'm
Pretty
like, guys, just trust me. Like, I'm not saying you need to do this, but like, this is what God is asking me to do. Like, deal with it. No. So I did that, and like, I was like, okay, all right, I guess I'm joining the church, and like, God's gonna lead me to a woman eventually who's in the church who like, I will help like guide her to like come to a realization of these things. But like that YSA ward in Flagstaff was like filled with a bunch of girls who were fresh out of high school. So I'm like, who all like want to go on missions and stuff. I'm just having no traction. And I'm like, God, you told me like when I was sent to Flagstaff, like there you will like show me your love. And like, you have taught me that like the person who I will marry will be like the physical, like one of the primary physical manifestations of your love in my life. And so like, I'm waiting. I've already been here for a few months now, like zero traction. I've downloaded Mutual. I have Hinge. I have whatever, Upward, the Christian app. Like
You have all the dating apps.
Yeah. I'm like, what else am I supposed to do? Like, I'm going to go to the like on-campus Bible study groups. I'm going to try to meet people. But it's like, I tried going to some of those like Bible-believing church congregations, and it's just weird when like you can't be yourself. Because like they don't believe the Book of Mormon. And if you bring up the Book of Mormon, they're like, demon, like
demon. It's just another place you don't fit. Pretty much.
Yeah. So it's like, this isn't for me. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think I need someone who, believes in the Book of Mormon, preferably. And it was funny though. I remember, back rewinding a little bit to my Jonah phase of like, do I really need to go to Flagstaff? I was like talking to God and like, man, just kind of pondering. Like, it would be so cool to like marry someone like, find someone like RLDS who wasn't overly attached to like their religious identity of like one true church, but like they've been through this crucible kind of like I have. But that's like super specific. So like I'll settle for a Bible believing Christian woman. Like,
because it feels so impossible.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody.
There's no one.
Yeah. There's no dating app for those who have left the church but believe Joseph Smith never practiced polygamy and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It just doesn't exist.
I know. And so it's like, wow, it takes a lot of trust in God that he's going to provide and that you're going to meet the right person when the time is right and like he has it lined up for you.
Absolutely.
So I had that trust in him, and it was hard though. It was really hard. And I was starting to lose hope and lose steam. And I started to concoct a plan of, I'm going to go back to BYU and I'm going to find, because that's where the Mecca is. That's where all the Mormon women are. So, in a sample size of however many women, maybe one in there will be open to this truer version of the historical
But we
narrative.
have to like train them.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yep.
I'll start them on Gilead's book.
No, that's too much. You got to start less.
Yeah.
Yep.
132 problems. Listen to this YouTube channel.
Yeah, there you go. That's a start.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Oh, so I was like, doing what Thomas does, trying to forecast my life mentally. And it's like, God's back here, just like, I already have it figured out. Just trust me. Like, don't worry so much.
Yep.
And one night, I'm back in my little dingy cell in this apartment complex. And I had to put in earplugs and an eye mask every night to go to sleep because the car's headlights would shine through my window because it's right outside the parking garage. It was so bad. But I had moments in there where I would cry out to God and he would comfort me. But anyway, one night I'm on my phone and I get a notification from guess which dating app. It was the Hinge app.
Of all the dating apps, like that's not even a good dating app. Oh my word.
I don't know. But it's the only one I'm getting a notification on, therefore it's the one that I care about at that moment. So I get this message from this girl, and it's like, "Be still, my beating heart. Can you teach me about quantum physics?" Something like that.
What?
Because in my bio I said I study mathematics, capital, and I have social skills. And so
Which
that was
is rare, by the way.
well, that's why I put it in my bio. And so that was me showing my bird feathers of trying to attract a mate. And so this girl, I guess she was into that. So she we were flirting back and forth, and I had set my profile in that app to say that I was Christian, because you can't be more specific than that. I guess maybe you can, but definitely not Mormon or LDS or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I just put Christian, and I had, set my settings where it's like, I only want to match. Well, actually, I think I was open-minded to like a spiritual or a Christian girl, because it's like sometimes the spiritual people are really open-minded, and it's like, I can work with that. But Christian, anyway, ended up being the description of this girl who matched with me. And she reached out to me. I'm like, oh, okay. This is not usual. This is not common. It's normally the guy who has to initiate conversation. So this girl, Lily, reached out to me. She was 26 years old. And we got chatting. And then she says she's from Missouri, from Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm like, oh, no way. My little brother, I don't know if you've heard of the LDS Church, but my little brother is a missionary, and he's in Taiwan, but he had to wait for his visa in that part of Missouri. And so that's really cool. Just trying to make connections, right? Trying to not be weird. And she's like, oh, no way. I was actually raised RLDS. And I'm like, oh, like she's going to think I'm like LDS, Brigham Young, all this stuff. I'm like, well, let me tell you what I think about Brigham Young. And like, Joseph Smith wasn't a polygamist, and like all these things.
Sends paragraphs.
Yeah, for real, actually. And she's like, does that like hand raised emoji. She's like, finally, someone who gets it.
This is glorious.
Yeah, you're telling me. So we're having this conversation, and I'm just like, no way. Like this girl, like actually, like she's smart. She's like, she's a chiropractor. She like got like higher education. I can geek out with her. She like knows stuff, and she believes the same things I do about the Restoration and the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith and all of these things. So it's like, well, like it wasn't long before it's like, okay, let's go on a date. I think Lily finally had to be like, so do you want to go on a date? Because I just like kept the conversation going. I was going to ask her out, but I guess she saw that I studied math and felt like I needed some help. So
Most men do, so it's okay.
So we go on our first date to Freddy's Steak Burgers because I didn't have a car at this time because the car I had gotten, I had a nice car before moving to Flagstaff, but like I had to sell it. And so I had this like really bad car and the engine gave out on me. And so I didn't have a car. And so here I am like asking this girl on a date. I don't have a car. And so I'm like, let's meet here because it's close to the bus stop.
I'm sure that was impressive.
I also was like at a low point during this because it's like I've been here in Flagstaff, like I'm not seeing like any progress towards these promises that I felt God had given to me. And so I'm like growing out my facial hair. Like my hair is long, like over my ears. Like I look rough. And I show up to this date and I've just looked like I've seen war. And also like I wasn't exuding confidence either because I had gone on some like mutual dates and I'm used to just like ending that. And like if I open up even a little bit or mention that I'm divorced or that like this is what I feel about the church, I'm just so used to like girls getting the ick and just like, and so I just felt kind of undesirable. And that was really hard to have confidence in dating, feeling that way, even though it's like, okay, if I really thought about it with God, like I know I have good qualities. Like I know I bring a lot to the table, but like, man, I don't feel like it around all these LDS people. And that was hard. So anyway, on this first date, like we're connecting really well, but I'm also like very low confidence. But at the same time, like I can see how compatible we are. Like we have like everything that is important to us. And like we put all our cards on the table. Like she told me things from her past. I told her like I'm divorced and like, but her immediate response was like, oh, I've had friends who got married young and like I get it. Like in high pressure religious communities, like it happens. Like to her, it was like just another long-term relationship. I'm like, wow, thank you so much for seeing it that way. And she just like gave me a chance. So we go on our first date, connect really well. But of course I'm like awkward about it at the end. She's like not even sure if I like her. But in my mind, I'm like, I think this might be my future wife. I really, you can't hear it. It's back off screen. She's here. She's like, he hated me. And that's not true. I thought very highly of her from our first experiences together. And so I'm ecstatic when she even like mentions the possibility of maybe going on a second date. Maybe she felt like, maybe she took pity on me because I was just a battle-worn grad student and she's gone through that herself. And so she gives me another chance. Like, and we go, I like, okay, I'm planning it. I'm like, okay, she likes like science stuff like me. Like, let's go to the observatory. Flagstaff is a really cool city. They have like a specific type of street light there that's like yellow to like prevent light pollution so that you can see the stars in the city. Like the planet Pluto, okay, if we're going to go that way. Pluto was discovered there at the observatory. So I thought it'd be a fun date. So we went and we're looking at the stars, looking through the telescopes and like trying to be flirty. I'm like, okay, this is like, I need to just be confident so she doesn't think I don't like her. Like I do like her a lot.
Did you get a haircut at this point?
I did.
Oh, good.
I actually
Good
did.
job.
I hadn't quite shaven yet, but I cleaned it up so it looked good. I got a haircut, so it's like, I'm trying. Okay, so it's like I'm going to show up. She's going to see that my hair's cut. She's going to see that I'm trying. And so we go. She had to drive me though. Because I still didn't have a car.
It's fine. It was fine.
So she picked me up for our second date, and we have a pretty good time. I wasn't able to hold her hand during at the planetarium, even though I wanted to. I was trying to be like close to her. I didn't get it. She didn't even like open that window. I didn't. Okay, but the planetarium's fun. I think we had like Chick-fil-A, and we go home. Well, I'm like asking her, I'm like, because I know she takes care of herself. She gets good sleep. So I'm like, so like you normally get to bed pretty early, don't you? She's like, yep, usually around 10. I like to go to sleep. And I'm looking at my watch and it's like 9:45. And I'm like, oh dang, I think she's I think she's done with this date.
I think she's done with this.
And so, well, anyway, we get in her car and she's like, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, you know, my mind's like, you just said like you'd like to go to bed at 10. So like, isn't this date over now? Like, she's like, how about like, we can make some tea. She had some herbal teas and like, who knows? Maybe it was green tea. Maybe I was being a rebel, but like, she's like, we can make some tea back at my apartment and we can just, you know, hang out there. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So she does have some interest in me if she's going to like, let me spend some more time in her. Cause we just wanted to continue our conversation. We were really liking getting to know each other. And so we go back to her apartment and we're playing, I can't remember if it was her or it was me who suggested that we play chess. Like one way to pass the time. So romantic, right? So we play chess and, she didn't have a table in her apartment yet. So we're just like playing on the carpet, like kneeling down and just playing. Yes, I ended up buying her a table. And so we play chess. She unfortunately did not win. And so it happens. So, and I think it was in that moment that she like started to fall for me when I beat her. No, just kidding. No, it's when we were playing and she just saw how I interacted with her.
Oh.
Oh yeah, she said she'll tell the real story. Yeah, but I think we just connected. We knew it was like it was really interesting. Like we were pretty much inseparable after that second date, because we just knew like there was something familiar about Lily, and she felt the same way. It's like something about you, Thomas, and like God has given her gifts, and it's amazing for me to see how He has operated in her life. And often she'll get dreams, and she would just say that like, you know, like I've had like, I don't want to do it injustice. I'm probably going to tell it wrong, but like she knows that she had been given dreams about like, well, and just almost like intuitive sense. Like she's like, I have a feeling that as soon as I move to Flagstaff, I'm going to meet my spouse. So there was one dream that Lily ended up having, and this is, okay, spoiler alert, we got married. But after we're married, Lily told me that right before moving to Flagstaff, she had a dream where she saw a man come down the stairs of a house, and he was putting on these gray running shoes, and he said, okay, are you ready to go for a run? And she didn't see his face or what he looked like, but she remembered that. And that was actually something that she recognized after we were married and living in our house. She's like, whoa, like I've seen this before, and I have great running shoes. So, and we go on runs a lot. So like, but anyway, it was this dream that Lily had been given from God that kind of clued her in that like something's happening in Flagstaff, and like she's going to meet her husband. And we were very open with each other right when we like fell for each other, of like, this is what we feel like God is doing in our lives and how He brought us here, and like, oh my goodness. And then it's like, we just felt like, okay, we were prepared for each other. So you might call it soulmates. Yeah, I don't know. I just know I was given, it was really interesting. So I was learning that in the somewhere in the Bible, it talks about the lily of the valley, which is a special flower that, okay, I hope I don't butcher this, but it's like, it has the property where it's able to like reproduce. It has like the male and the female aspects together. And so it's kind of like a symbol of the union of like the perfect matrimony, I guess you could say. And it's like, it was just funny because that's what Lily was named after. And it's just like all these things of like, God's like, I prepared this person for you. And it was really interesting finally meeting someone where it's like falling in love to like, because you actually admire this person and you love them and they make you a better person, and you're pursuing a relationship with them, not because you feel pressure to walk the covenant path, but because you love them and it's just pure love and they love you and you just can't think of spending your life without them. And that's what I found in Lily and what she found in me. And we just clicked, and we knew. And we had the hard conversations too. Yeah, many times Lily gave me like some really weird looks because it's like I defied her expectations in like men she's experienced in her life. She's like, wait a second, like this is possible. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. All I'm saying is there's like, because I felt the same way about her. It was just about each other. We found this compatibility together, and God was very, very a part of our relationship from day one. Yeah, it was like, and it was really interesting seeing Lily come from her background in the LDS Church and just being so much, she was raised in a way where a relationship with Jesus Christ is absolutely something everyone should be having. And like, if you're not doing that, what are you doing kind of thing? But like, not in a like dummy kind of way, but like, this is what God has given us. This is our privilege as believers. And like, this is our heritage. This is what the restoration is supposed to be about, is restoring that relationship with Jesus Christ, because he is the mediator of the everlasting covenant. And part of the purpose of Joseph Smith, you read in what is in the LDS Doctrine and Covenants section 1, it lists like I, the Lord, seeing the calamity that shall come upon the children of men, have called upon my servant Joseph Smith and he lists these things to have him do. And one of those things is to establish the everlasting covenant. And that covenant is the same one that the Apostle Paul is talking about. It's the one where we enter that relationship with Jesus Christ and become adopted by him and have a walking, talking relationship with Jesus Christ. And he's going to be the one who does the mediating of the covenant. Like it's him. He's the one who issues it. And it's like, this stuff's like obvious if you're RLDS, like or in the specific branch that Lily grew up in, at least in what she experienced, right? I can't speak for a whole organization, right? Mm-hmm. But having her influence in my life showed me a new side of the nature of God. And it was really profound to me to start to see the gifts of the Spirit start to wake up. It's really important that people who believe in Jesus Christ and have a testimony of him associate with each other, because it's like a fire. It spreads. You get one person who shares their light with another, and it's like, wait a second, like I can do that too? And you start to see what's possible in Christ. And people start turning on like light bulbs, and it's like we're activating each other. And that's what is happening in this podcast, is like people are watching this and it's spreading hope and it's spreading light. And I got to experience that in a very intimate way with God putting Lily in my life. And so very, very thankful for that. So, I mean, where should we go? I can talk about maybe how our relationship progressed to when we got married. I don't just want to, skip to that.
Yeah, don't skip that part.
Okay. You want to hear the juicy details. Yeah, so I think it was like, so I didn't have a car at this time, right? But I had arranged to get a car up in Utah, and when I went back for Thanksgiving with my family, because I was in Flagstaff, I got there at the end of summer, and I stayed there until fall when I met Lily in November. On November 14th, we had our first date. And then, that's only like 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to get to Thanksgiving to get this car. Lily, you have a car. Do you want to come to Thanksgiving and meet my family? And she's like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but yes. So she drove me up in her car. Well, I guess maybe I drove, but we went up together, and my family met her, and it's like, okay, this is, I'm like, okay, family, this is my girlfriend, Lily. And like, she's getting to meet them and kind of experience an LDS family for the first time. And it was a really good experience. Like, my mom had put a vase of sunflowers up in the bedroom where she was staying. And that's her favorite flower. And it was just like these small little things that was just like so touching to her. And, and she was so overwhelmed with how much love, she saw in my family. And that was important to me. I was glad that she got to see it, because it's like, I love my family. And yeah, they're all active in the LDS Church still, but I was active in the LDS Church. It did so much good for me. Like I received the baptism of fire as a fully active member of the church. So like, it doesn't really matter your church membership.
No, it shouldn't be organizations or institutions that hold our relationships together. It should be our relationships that hold our relationships together.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
God that holds our relationships together.
Yeah, and so when I had rejoined the LDS Church, I was really afraid that people would think that like this would somehow like mark a shift in my relationship with them, when it's like, this has nothing to do with my relationship with any of you. Like, I love you all regardless of my or your relationship with this external entity. But then again, I understand that it's this like tribal identity, and it's like we're sealed together as a family, and it's because we're connected through the power offered through this church that like it's an extension of our family. So if you turn your back on the church, you're kind of like betraying the family, and it's really deep rooted things, and it's hard. I understand how hard that is to deal with. Yeah, I don't know what to say other than that's really hard. And it's only through honest, raw, vulnerable conversations that people can come to an understanding. And it's hard because it's like, I know my family doesn't really want to talk to me about that. Like, if they're offended by my relationship with the church one way or the other, it's like, we could have had a conversation about it. Like, the point is I respect their walk with Jesus Christ. God's told me to not push it when it comes to my religious views of my family, just to be supportive of them. And I want nothing more than to be supportive of their walk with Jesus Christ in the context of the LDS Church, because they still have the Book of Mormon, they still have the Bible, they still have every avenue to come unto Christ. The church is a great vehicle for many people, but it also, attaches a lot of extra add-ons that maybe can be stumbling blocks. I can say, at least speaking for myself, and I know many others who have felt that way. So let's see, getting back to Flagstaff. So we have a good time at Thanksgiving, and then we go back home. And Lily had moved in right up the street from me. Okay, so we're both transplants from our different states, her from Missouri, me from Utah, both into Flagstaff. And God just plants us right on the same street, like a walk up the street. And so we're spending a lot of time together, getting to know each other, and just having like it was actually, okay, funny, on our way back down from Thanksgiving, I had a car now because I picked up a car. So we're driving separate. So sad. We couldn't do the drive together, but we stopped for burritos in Kanab at some like little Mexican restaurant. And it was over burritos that we decided, do you want to elope? Like 2 weeks of dating. Yeah. And then both of us are like, we can't do that though. That's like very disrespectful to our families. Like, we want them to be involved. So we're like, okay, what can we do? Can we elope and then like pretend we're not married and like still have a wedding ceremony with everyone there? And like, then they think it's the real thing. Like, well, we don't want to do like these deceptive measures. Like, that's weird. So, but we decided like, okay, well, let's do it in Sedona, Arizona, because that's desert. It's beautiful there. Red Rock, just super spiritual place. But we did decide we want to get married. We're like, when should we get married? And we're like, okay, next year's 2024, multiple of 4. That's a leap year. Let's get married on leap day.
2024 is a good year to get married.
So we're like, why not? Like, everything about our lives is so crazy. Like, this day that only comes once every 4 years, like, let's do it. And so we decided, like, yeah, after 2 weeks of dating and 2 weeks of knowing each other, okay? 2 weeks of knowing each other. We spend Thanksgiving together, and on our way home, way back to Arizona, we're getting married on leap day.
Well, when you know, you know.
When you know, you know.
I used to hate that phrase.
Just gotta believe, Claire.
Yep, pretty much.
So we get back to Arizona, and we're like, okay, we're doing this. And so we're talking to my older brother. He's a jeweler. And so he has connections. He can get us a custom ring. And we decided that emerald would be our stone, because different gemstones, they have different meanings. And if you look up emeralds, it's the stone of everlasting love. And so we designed an engagement ring for Lily that is the big center stone is this, it's a pentagon, but it's like pointy. It's not, every side's not the same length. But anyway, it almost looks like a shield. And it's emerald. And it's pure emerald. It's not synthetic. And then I got this ring. It has emerald in it. But turns out crushed emerald is more translucent than it is green. And so they mixed in some malachite to give it the color to come through. I don't know if it's showing up in the frame. But yeah, so it was just fun because it's like, we love green and like, we're just going to do it our way. There's no temple wedding necessary.
No pressure to keep this image at all.
Yeah, it's like, we're just doing it our own way. We're doing it our own way. I mean, there was some pressure to make sure family felt included.
Right.
As it is with weddings. I mean, that's just our culture in America. So
yeah, totally.
yeah. Yeah, never mind at church. And so we are praying and we're trying to receive revelation of like, how do we go about this? Like, this isn't a typical wedding. And we both want it to be meaningful. And God is answering our prayers and he's just like giving us information separately. And we're kind of coming together. And God's telling us that like, okay, like I have, and this isn't really something we talk about in the LDS tradition, but like the concept of archangels. And arch just means like presiding. You have the hierarchy of angels and different angels are more ascended than others. And God wanted us to honor the archangels in our wedding ceremony, kind of with the 4 directions. And so we made this like, and it just kind of came to us in pieces where it's like, okay, like as the weeks approached, okay, you need to have a round board with like designs on it, kind of like a compass. And you need to put a candle on each of the 4 points and have a candle in the middle. And so it's interesting. There's so many little different rabbit holes I could go around with the symbolism of this, but like, it was almost like, okay, each of the 4 candles represented like the 4 archangels according to the 4 cardinal directions. And then the middle one represented like the light of Christ. And we were shown like a candle lighting ceremony we were supposed to do as a part of our wedding ceremony. And when the day of the wedding came, we had, we'll get to that because more things happened before the wedding came. So we're in Arizona. I'm doing my master's program and Lily is looking for a job as a chiropractor. Well, she had already been promised a job. She came to work at a chiropractic office, but you have to get your license from the board of chiropractic in the state of Arizona, and they're just not issuing the license to her. They're just being really slow and bureaucratic, and so she's not getting a job. And so we start talking about like, well, what if we need to end up in Utah? What if like she knows people on the board in Utah? So for her career moves, maybe we need to go to Utah. And so I'm open-minded to it. I'm like, well, my family lives there. And she ends up by even mentioning that she might transfer to Utah because it's a franchise that she was working for. They ended up just firing her. And this was also right after, I'm losing, okay, the exact sequence of things is hard to remember, but I had also, this was in January, okay, so this was right after I had decided, after one semester in a mathematics master's program, that I don't need this anymore. I've already accomplished my purpose for coming down to Flagstaff. I'm dropping out.
There you go.
So I did. I started looking for jobs back in software and AI, where I had been working before. And I got like a little part-time job thing doing like data annotation. And I was working for 2 weeks doing that after I left school. And it's like, okay, this can cover both of our expenses. But then Lily got fired for like no good reason. And then this job I was doing, they just like also just randomly fired me too. So we're both jobless in Arizona and we have like no idea what to do. So I was like, well, okay, I guess we're moving to Utah. Because that's where my family is, and like my parents have some extra room in their house, so they had a few extra bedrooms, so we had to move to Utah. But before we moved to Utah, I do want to mention that I gained clarity on why. I didn't mean for that to be the pun of the podcast, but I gained some clarity about why God had me join the LDS Church again, because I didn't really know. I just knew He wanted me to, but I learned that when I rejoined, on the records of the church, I was still sealed to my ex. And yeah, I thought that by leaving the church, it would just like dissolve the sealing.
Mm-mm.
But who knows how that system works.
Yeah.
But like, I was still sealed to her. And so by rejoining the church, I was able to get the sealing canceled.
Wow, that
Yes.
makes so much sense.
Yes. And, you know,
Wow.
there are going to be audience members who are like, well, the sealing wasn't done by God's authority, so like it didn't matter anyway.
Still, though, you're cutting ties.
Exactly. And these on whatever energetic spiritual level,
Right.
it's there. It's there. And so that was really important to me. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't have rejoined.
That makes sense.
And so, yes.
God is
all
in the details.
God is
That's
in the
amazing.
details.
Oh my
He makes things make sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So just got to be patient sometimes, and
No kidding.
he'll reveal it in hindsight. So, and I didn't know that because I had assumed it was all already taken care of.
Right.
So yes, that was able to get approved. The cancellation was sealed. I received my second letter from the first presidency. My first one was my first confirmation of removal of records. And now I have another one. I'm getting a collection of your sealing has been canceled. And so, and it's not the last one. So, okay, all that stuff. There's so much going on. So we moved back to Utah. We moved to Utah. Lily's never been there to live. She's been through it with great trepidation. The RLDS people warned their children to stay away from Utah
Oh, man.
unless they want to become a plural wife. But no, I'm just kidding. That's not all of them are that way. Because clearly we do not practice plural marriage in the LDS Church.
Right. For now.
Depends who you ask.
Right.
So we move to my parents' house. They have a bedroom upstairs for me and a bedroom downstairs for Lily. So that's where we are until February, the time of the wedding. And it was a really wonderful day. So we had my immediate family, just my family members, and then Lily's mom and Lily's stepdad were able to join us and one of Lily's friends. And it was a small, intimate setting at the top of a kind of mountain in Sedona. And we made our family hike, and we didn't tell them how long the hike was going to be because we didn't want to scare them away. So it was like a 3-mile hike. I mean, to the top of this like mountain thing.
It's a long hike.
Yeah, but there were some people who got to drive in a Jeep, and they had cars that could handle the rocky road, and it was very rocky. And we drove it once before ourselves, to make sure it was navigable. It was, thankfully.
That's good.
So we get to the top, and I'm in my green suit because I want green. I like green. And I'm, trying to have some sort of desire. Usually the women just, take over the wedding day and just do everything their own way. But it's like, let's do things a little different this time. So I'm like wearing this bolo tie. Like that's not typical. So
That's not typical.
but it was fun. It was fun. And we're at the top of this overlook, and Lily's stepdad is a member of the Community of Christ Church. So their version of the Doctrine and Covenants has that section that was taken out of ours when D&C 132 was put in. So they have a thing they say when they're like marrying a couple. And so this is how it was done in the earliest days of the church. Plus, we had this candle lighting ceremony that God wanted us to do, which was really interesting because they're on the overlook, okay? You're standing, you look down over into kind of the small valley below, and you see there's an arrangement of rocks that has been placed in a circle with like a cross in it, which is very similar to the design of this candle board that God had us make. It's related to the Native Americans, like 4 directions. It's a very like sacred thing within their belief system. So we did that. We were obedient to the promptings of the Spirit. We don't really know why God had us do that, but we felt like, okay, we're going to need all the help we can get from angels in this marriage, and because this is a wild ride we're on. And so it was a beautiful day, and we went and got Mexican food after in honor of the burrito that we had that planned this whole thing in the first place. And it was a very special day. It was a little hard, I think, for some of my family members to be a part of a ceremony that's not a temple ceremony. Because it's like, what do we make of this? Is this real? Is this, it's not like sealed in the temple. So this is weird. And I understand, I get it. Like there's no framework to even comprehend like how such a thing could be.
Right.
Yeah. But let's see, after we got married, we went back up to Utah and we were both still unemployed, doing our best to try to find a job. And it was super hard to have faith, but I still kept going back to that dream that God gave me with the young lion and like, okay, I'm going to provide for you. And so he did. He really did. Like money would show up unexpectedly and it would just be enough for us to get by. And it wasn't until April that I was able to get a job, and it's meeting our needs. It's a remote job. It's just what we need. And it was a huge blessing. And God was able to show Lily that I got it a little bit before I received it. And so she knew, but it was beautiful to be given that blessing and to see God come through and show up, and to also have like signs of the Spirit be associated with it. Right. So my own spiritual progress at this time, and it was really interesting. I will say though, I do want to come back and emphasize, like there are so many valuable things in the LDS tradition and the faith that comes from God legitimately. And I know, among kind of the circles we are in, there's a lot of mixed feelings about the temple.
Yes.
A lot of mixed feelings. And I think there's some disagreement about, okay, is the implementation of the temple in alignment with God's design? And that's a whole doctrinal rabbit hole one can go down. But the covenants in them, at least the themes within them of obedience, sacrifice, following the gospel, chastity, and consecration, God was teaching me and Lily about each of those things independently to a new depth that neither of us knew before I had ever, even though I'd been involved with the temple and she's never been involved with it. But these principles are true, like aspects of them are true and honorable. And there's enough of it there that those who attend the temple regularly can glean a lot of good from it. And so we have learned to value that, and we don't diminish the temple because of that, even though I understand it can be a very difficult place and for a lot of people. And so, I mean, there's a lot I could say about it, but I just do want to make it clear that we are very supportive of our family members and loved ones and friends who still believe that the temple is the house of God. And he can show up there because he shows up where the pure in heart are, and he comes to you in your heart, whether you're in an LDS temple or a Buddhist temple. He can be there in your heart. And hopefully the point is that you will take him with you in your heart when you go out of the temple, so that he can walk with you.
Yes, I love that. You put that beautifully. Okay, so did you remove your records a second time?
Oh, yes. Okay. When I was in... Okay, so when you do this weird kind of like pseudo-elopement wedding, you don't really have a reception the day of, right? So we had to arrange like getting our family, like providing opportunities for my side of the family, extended family to celebrate, and Lily's side of the family. And so while being jobless too and trying to like set stuff up. So we had to pull some strings, but we were able to have like a bit of an open house in Utah at my parents' house. And that was nice to see family and celebrate with them, because my family means a lot to me. And I don't want them to feel like, oh, Thomas doesn't care about us or want to share these good things in his life with us. So, and I know Lily felt that way about her family. Like we want people to know that we care about them and we love them. And that religious differences are so like, not a good reason to harm a relationship if we're all trying to come unto Christ, or our best conception of the goodness of God, right? So we have it in March, we have my family's thing, but it's not until like the middle of the summer, I think was it July, that we had it in Kansas City on her side. And I'm still a member of the church at this time because I just didn't feel necessarily like I wasn't attending regularly, because when I did, it just like felt like it wasn't filling my spiritual cup. It just didn't feel like I'm supposed to be here. And like there were some mornings on Sundays when it's like we would look at each other, Lily and I, and we'd be like, should we go to the local ward? And I would feel like, I don't know. And I'm actually feeling the Spirit. There was one moment when the Spirit was like, don't go, don't go, don't go. And for some reason, it's like, but I just want to see, just in case there's something that I can do to kind of like offer the light of Christ to someone. But the Spirit's saying, don't go, don't go. And I guess I just have my own ideas about how I want to be used by God, I guess. And so I went anyway. We both went, and like, it was not good. And we both like were really emotionally brought down for like the rest of the day. And so that was a lesson to us, like, okay, when the Spirit warns us, we need to obey.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, after we go to Kansas City and do this reception there, it was, I'm really glad we did, but it was really interesting meeting Lily's side of the family, because that night I was given a dream. And in this dream, I was introduced to, I don't even know doctrinally how this fits, but I was shown my spirit family. And the father of the household was filled with this ancient, beautiful love that is so hard to even put into words. All of the siblings had so much respect for the father, and he just beamed love. And in this household, like there was, I was out in the backyard with some of the brothers, and they were kind of like, because I married Lily, she was a part of this family already. And the brothers were kind of like showing me like what they're all about as a family. And they're very committed to the gospel of Jesus Christ and the light and the truth. And it was, they were going to kind of show me the ropes. They're like, okay, Thomas, like you married into this family now. Like, okay, you're a part of us. So let's kind of give you some orientation. And as they're starting, they're going to like open the scriptures and start showing me stuff. But they're in the backyard. We were like sitting on these chairs, and it was like this like black tornado like descended down from the sky and touched in this backyard. And it was like, whoa, what is that? But like, we weren't sure what to make of it. It was almost like a dust devil, because we like jumped into it. It didn't like lift us up or anything. We just like went and stood in the middle and like looked up. We're like, whoa, this is so cool. Like it just looked cool. Mm-hmm. But then like while we're in one, we like look and like over the like estate, like mansion, like where we are, where the family is, where the father is, and the mother too. There was this like gargantuan tornado, like off in the distance, this blackness, like coming towards the house. And then like another one opened up in the backyard, but it was like horizontal, and it was like a dark portal, and like darkness like started coming out. And then like one of the older brothers was like, they found our location. They being whatever dark spiritual force is. And like it was like urgency, but not alarm. Like no one was freaking out. And then the father started like gathering people together, and he's like, okay, like we need to respond to this, but only those who have passed through the fire can fight. And then the scene shifted, the dream shifted, dream vision, like what difference does it make even at this point? It shifted, and I was in a room with the family surrounding me, and it was kind of like a semicircle room with a brick back wall, and I was up against the back wall in front of everyone, and there was a big furnace in the back wall, the raging fire. And I knew intuitively that like I was going to have to pass through that fire. And so one of the older brothers had like given me a choice between these two weapons. There was like a straight blade, and then there was like a curved blade. And I chose the curved blade, and I didn't know what for, but I knew I'd need it when I'd go in the furnace. And so they had me like strip down a few layers of clothing so that it wouldn't get in the way when I was like put in the furnace. And it was kind of scary. Like imagine yourself standing in front of a room of like this family you've just joined, and like there's like something ancient about all of it. And the father is there. Well, he's standing there with you because like he's gonna put you in the fire. And but you like feel this pure love coming to you. And it's like, it's your turn. It's your turn to pass through this that everyone else has. except for the younger ones, but it's your turn now. And I was like, it was kind of scary, but I'm like, no, I know this is what needs to happen. And so I just put my trust in the arms of the Father, and then he puts me in the furnace. And it's like when you watch Harry Potter, where they enter the fireplace and it transports them to a new place. By entering the furnace, it's like I was dropped down into another dimension. And it was like this trial chamber where it was like an amalgamation, like a space-time amalgamation of different events of my life. And I was being passed through different trials where I was I had to exercise faith in God and trust that he would provide me with what I needed, because that sword the design I had picked out at the beginning, I needed to create a handle for it so that I could use it for what I presumed would be the spiritual battle from these dark forces that had come in. And I'm going through these trials to find this machete that I need to take the handle off of it and then put it on this new weapon. Okay. And I'm going through these different trials of faith, right? To trust that God will provide for me, and just pray and trust that I can find these things. And so anyway, as I'm going through this other dimension, my higher self is up still in this furnace, but I'm down here. I have a double awareness of what's going on. And they're all watching me is he going to make it? Is he going to make it through the fire? And I go through these series of tasks and one of the tasks was find the machete. You got to find the machete so you can get the handle off of it. And I couldn't find it anywhere. But then finally it was I think Lily had dropped in my dream, and she's she was getting in my way. I was looking, and she was not letting me get past her. And I'm just let me keep looking. And she just was trying to give me a hint without telling me the answer. And she was blocking me, and it was shown then I just oh, I got it. I just need to have faith that God will give it to me. And so I just stopped. I'm God, please just show me where it is. You have all power. Please show me. And then I just felt something under my shirt, and I pull out the machete from under my shirt. I found it. And so it's that was one of the trials of my faith in this dream. And then the mother appeared to me, and she just said, you're doing great. You haven't burned up. You're doing amazing. Keep going. You're not done yet. Keep going. And then she went back up. And then towards the end of the trial chamber, I remember I had an understanding that even though I'd entered the trial chamber through the furnace, I was gonna actually enter that room from the back door. It's I would I'd enter the furnace, but I'd come back in through the back door. And I actually didn't see fully what happened towards the end. I know that I was successful though, but God actually veiled it from my view, because that weapon that I had, because I ended up being able to successfully forge it together by having the faith to command the atoms to just join together. And when the weapon was done being made, it was kind of like a reaper's scythe, but also with a longer sword. One of the oldest ancient brothers, he took it from me, and I was only given a glimpse of what happened next. But the father of this family, he was sacrificed with the weapon that I had made. And even though he had the power of life within him to resurrect, he gave his life for me and shed his blood so that I would be cleaned. And I was horrified. I thought this was going to be my battle weapon, but it was used by this being of perfect love to sacrifice himself for me. And then I knew after the dream that, well, two things. One, that the weapon that we all have is the blood of Christ when fighting spiritual battles. And that the battle's already been fought. It's already been won. And the second was, Thomas, you've passed through the fire and you've not been burned. Welcome to the family. And I was a little bit confused about this because I thought I had already had that baptism of fire back when I was 17. So I was like, what's going on now? I'm 27. It's been a decade. And after, pondering for a week or two, praying, I was given an understanding that vision, that dream was kind of stepping out of the regular timeline of my life. And God was just kind of showing me bits and pieces from my life and confirming indeed what had happened when I was 17, and just throughout my life. There's going to be multiple awakenings or rebirths that we go through on this journey. And so it was like, whoa, okay, that was like undeniable. Like, okay, have I passed through the fire? Like, if I had any uncertainty before, I don't anymore now. Because that was not just a dream. I was like taken spiritually somewhere. So after this had happened, though, I started to have a little bit of uncertainty, not about what that had happened there, but like just where I was in the doctrine of Christ. Faith, repentance, baptism, gift of the Holy Ghost, endure to the end. I was just confused because it's like, but like that endure to the end, Nephi says like, and thus like if you endure to the end, steadfastness in Christ, thus saith the Father, ye shall have eternal life. And I'd read the sermons of Paul where he talks about like, we need to make our calling and election sure. I thought, what is this? How can I make sure that I've done this? And once you do, you're a part of the church of the firstborn, all these things. Well, God had showed me through, there's a treasure trove in the patriarchal blessings given by Hiram Smith. He was a patriarch for the church from 1840 to 1844, and he gave many patriarchal blessings that have been compiled, and you can read through them. And in many of those blessings, right there in the blessing, he says to the person, I seal upon you the promise of eternal life. I give you the Holy Spirit of promise and the second comforter, the comfort of knowing that you have a place in God's kingdom and you have been saved. So I understand there's different interpretations of what it means by what is meant by the second comforter, but Hiram Smith undoubtedly refer to the second comforter as that promise of eternal life, to have your calling to salvation and your election or being chosen, right? Many are called, few are chosen. That calling and election made sure, where you can have that more sure word of prophecy or the knowledge from God himself, from Jesus, from the mediator of the covenant, that you have entered that covenant and that you are an heir, a joint heir with Christ. But I needed to get rid of this uncertainty of what, about am I saved? You'd think I'd know by now, but like, and I actually had come to a realization around the same time of this dream, not long after that, like, it's time to remove my records from the LDS Church to finally get around to answering your question. And so I did. I submitted a record to my request to the bishop there. He didn't know who I was, but I was just very, very just nonchalant about it. Like, this needs to happen. We need to do this. And he processed it, and it was returned 2 years and 3 days after the first letter I got of my initial resignation. Mm-hmm. It's the exact same template, by the way, word for word, 2 years later.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And ultimately, the reason I did it, and my family doesn't know this yet, but Lily and I, like, we are going to have a family one day. Mm-hmm. And we already know that it's not our path to be within the LDS Church. Mm-hmm. And it's important to us that we don't have our children's records being traced and tracked by the church. Yeah. So people can make of that whatever they want, but it's mm-hmm. a conversation I'm happy to have, and it's a personal decision. Mm-hmm. And so it's what we've chosen. And so I ruined my record. So neither of us are a part of a specific church right now. Mm-hmm. So with that, I was able to just, shake that off. It's like, okay, it's just going forward with God, following that voice of Christ after, repenting of all of our sins, doing, if there's something in your life that's keeping you away from God, you have to comprehend it. You have to get rid of it. Or else you can't even make the first steps to God if you're in constant turmoil over your conscience. Like, you have to have a clear conscience if you're going to approach the throne of God. And he gives us the path of repentance to do that. And he loves us and he'll forgive us, and it's available to everyone. So you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be aligned to the best of your conscience within the scope of your awareness. So as Lily and I are trying to live that way, and as I'm trying to make sense of these visions and dreams, and trying to make, have I been, like, how can I have my calling election made sure? Okay, there was a stumbling block, and I want to touch on this because there is a common idea that in order to receive a promise of eternal life from Jesus, he has to appear to you in the flesh and like shake your hand and like basically like be there right there as tangible 3D as possible to issue you that promise. And you have to feel the wounds in his hands and unless that happens, or here another version of it is you need to be called up unto the throne of God, unto the exceedingly high mount like Nephi was. And you need to be brought there in this magnificent vision in order to receive this promise from God. And while that has happened to people and happened to prophets, as I study the patriarchal blessings of Hiram Smith that he gave to people, it's like they're not being rocketed up into heaven to receive these promises from God, that they have been sealed up unto eternal life, okay? And they've received that second comforter, that Holy Spirit of promise. And so I was still like, that's what I think now, that's not necessary to see Jesus in order to receive that promise from him. Nevertheless, we are to seek Jesus, and we can see him. That's not like a point of debate or contention, as the Book of Mormon calls it. So I was still, though, caught up and anxious in my own heart. You know, the fear and trembling. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling before God. I have that fear and trembling still, even after all these events. And I just wanted to have some peace of mind. And so I was talking to Lily about it too. And, you know, she comes from this background where it's like, I already have a walk with Jesus. Like he and I are great. Like I can talk to him all the time. Like, and me coming from my background, it's like, yeah, but like, have you really had your second comforter? Or, you know, just like, just like, yeah. Uh-huh.
Have you checked the box?
Yeah, no, seriously.
Right?
Yeah. And I think there might be some people in our circles who are still in that mentality of like, sure, we got out of the covenant path checkbox, but like we can't make the doctrine of Christ into a new checkbox path.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, oh man, so I was just starting to get really anxious about it and like studying books and like, well, what is the testimony of Jesus? What does this mean? And I'm just studying the words of man and I'm praying one night trying to gain understanding about this, and God opens up another vision to my mind. And I'm on BYU campus, and I'm underneath the BYU library, but not because I'm underground, but because the BYU library is lifted up into the air, and I'm standing in its shadow. And so I can see like that light of day like around it, you know, but I'm under it in its shadow. And it was a symbol of, because the BYU library holds a lot of like LDS teachings and stuff about, you know, the stuff I'm looking into to try to make sense of my questions. And it was God's way of I'm like witnessing this vision. I'm seeing, okay, what does this mean, God? What do you want me to get from this? And he just told me, you are trusting in the wisdom of man to try to like solve your salvation. Like, that's not how it works. You need to meet me in here. And so it's like, okay, I think I get it. Instead of trying to solve the puzzle, I am just going to work on my relationship with you. And he's like, that's what I'm trying to tell you all along. Come to me. When I say come to me, it's not a metaphor. Like, come to me, spend time with me, talk with me. I want to talk with you. I have great news for you. Like, just come to me. You think that would have settled my heart, but I found a way to work myself up into a frenzy again a few days later. And Lily's talking to me, and I'm like, but Lily, the second comforter, like, we need to have it or else we're not really saved. And like, and so she's like, oh, okay, I'll just let you figure this out. Like, sweet Thomas. And so she's trying to comfort me. And like, maybe you need an adjustment. Like, she takes me up to the chiropractic table, you know, to help me like get the stress out of my body. And she gives me an adjustment, and of course it helps. But like, it's like in this spiritual moment of like, I'm just breaking down. Like, God, I can't. Like, he had just shown me that I had a lifelong struggle with perfectionism, and that like this checking off the box mentality is a symptom of that perfectionism, and that it's time to let it go. And you need to be done. You need to repent of your perfectionism, is what he told me. I was like, oh boy. Message received. But I'm still struggling. Okay, but how best can I overcome perfectionism, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. It doesn't help that I'm like into mathematics and optimization. So
probably not.
Yeah. So here I am, broken down, an emotional wreck on this chiropractic table. Lily's giving me an adjustment, and she's like, oh, please, Jesus, like, you gotta help me out here. Like, and she's adjusting me, and I'm just weeping, and I just like, I feel Jesus talking to me. And I'm just like, Jesus, please, can I have the promise of eternal life, to have assurance that there's a place for me? And it was so simple, so soft and sweet. Jesus whispered in my ear and he said, yes, Thomas, you have it. And my burden was lifted. My fear and trembling was gone. And I knew that that was Jesus giving me that promise of eternal life, the calling and election made sure that Paul talks about. And it is something for all of us. And in fact, it's intended to co-occur with the baptism of fire. But you have to have the faith to ask and believe that he can give it to you, and that you don't have to wait until the end of your life struggling with fear and trembling for decades until you've earned your salvation. God is good. Jesus loves you, and he has a place for you. You just need to give your heart to him and ask him for that promise, and ye shall receive. So I explained to Lily what just happened after it happened. And she's like, I know, I saw him next to you. I saw him come in, and I saw him whisper something in your ear, but I didn't hear what he said. I'm like, you saw him? She's like, yeah. And so there was a second witness, and it was just so beautiful. And it's like, wow, God is so good. And he has, he was true. It was true when he told me back in the summer before, you're going to meet the manifestation of my love for you in the flesh, in Flagstaff. And that's what Lily has been to me. And I thank God for it, because she's changed my life, and Jesus, my walk with him has been absolutely transformed. And it's amazing how someone who already knows Jesus, when they enter your life and you have an open heart to Jesus, how much they can help you. And in turn, how much you can then go and help others to be like, you can wave that flag. It's real. His love for you is real. And we don't need to get caught up in these controversies and these debates and these contentions and these prophecy and the mysteries. There's a place for them, but not at the expense of our own personal walk with Jesus Christ. We can't use the scriptures or churches or online debates or whatever as a way to hide from God. We need to come unto him.
Wow, Thomas, holy cow. You have a beautiful testimony and a beautiful story. And I have felt the Spirit so strong all throughout your story. And I know others are going to as well. Thank you for coming and sharing your story. How do you find clarity in your life now?
When I'm not stressing myself out, I find clarity by taking time alone to be still and talk to God. And I still read the scriptures. I still study his word. But it's all made alive by his living word. When he speaks to me in my mind and shows me things by dreams or visions and helps me, it's a lot in here. He's showing me, the whole endure to the end. It's a phase, and it's meant to last a long time, because there's still a lot of things inside of us that are messed up that God's going to shine the light on, and he's going to help us eliminate them. And so for me, a lot of the clarity is working through those things that God is showing me about myself and finding the kingdom of heaven within as I clear room for him to show up.
I love that. Finding the kingdom of God within as we clear room for him to show up. Thank you so much, Thomas, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Claire.
If you guys are interested in joining us for an episode of the Clarity Podcast where you share your story of how you left mainstream religion to follow Jesus Christ, please feel free to reach out to me at clarity.podcast@gmail.com. You can also find me on my website at forgedinhisfire.com, or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Forged in His Fire. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us on this week's episode of the Clarity Podcast.